I feel like it kind of makes the community a little complicit and complacent in where they are in society. And when I see the community, um, I mostly think black men, because black women are the most educated group in society, despite being the most like disrespected, and like they have like the most burden. Um, so so I just really feel like it's important to have these conversations. So basically, yeah, that was my little like introduction of like what we were gonna talk about. I'm gonna let like Keela introduce herself, and then we're just gonna like get the ball rolling.
Should I introduce myself? Like name, age?
Whatever feels natural to you, and whatever you
Okay.
feel comfortable sharing.
My name is Kayla. I'm 19. I'm from Boston, and I go by she, they pronoun.
Nice, nice. I didn't even do the pronouns, but
It's okay.
okay. So I'm trying to see. So tell us a little bit about yourself, like Kayla. Like, how would you describe your identity, like moving around in the world? Like, how do you see yourself?
Well, I see myself. I mean, to put it to the forefront, racially, I see myself as a mixed race woman. Um, it's very apparent in my features, in my experiences, like especially being a mixed like race person of a lighter skin tone. Um, Ever since I was a kid, I've seen the ways in which I was treated differently from my darker skinned friends or darker skinned cousins, and also hearing stories from my mother about you know experiences of colorism in her family, and like those type of things. And like when I move around in the world, I do see that I have a lot of privileges when it comes to colorism. I'm on the benefiting end of it, not the receiving end of it. Featureism, texturism, and then that's when things get a little bit gray when it comes to like texturism, like hair texturism, like because like say in like the African American community, like I'm considered to have good hair, but like in Dominican community, I'm considered to have bad hair, which led to my experience of having my hair texturized without my consent last October. Um, but like besides that, of course, racism, I've experienced so much racism, but in terms of like problems within the black community, I'm not really highly targeted because of my skin color and because of my features. So um, that was really hard for me to come to terms with, because I used to be one of those people like, oh, black is black at the end of the day, and kind of not really looking at how these systems have been built, like from colonial times, colonized times. Like these things are still put in place and they're still being perpetuated today, which like shows then in itself that these systems are still alive and they're still running and they're still pressing people and pushing people to the margins. And the more we don't like have these conversations, the more it's going to continue on. So yeah, in terms of my identity, I have to say that.
So you talked about like stories about like you like seeing
Mm-hmm.
the impacts of colorism
Mm-hmm.
to your darker skinned cousins, to
Yeah.
your friends. You said your mom. Can you elucidate on some of those
Yeah.
stories so we can like see the gravity?
Yes. So my great grandmother, she's dark skinned, and all her brothers, sisters, all of them are dark skinned. My grandfather's dark skinned. Everybody's dark skinned. But one thing that my great grandmother would tell, like her kids, so like her grandkids, as they were getting older, was to marry lighter, so that they would have lighter skinned kids and not to have darker skinned kids, and so that they wouldn't come out with bad hair that was hard to manage, and things like that. And they were saying these things, and they are black themselves. So it was just like that self-hatred, it was very apparent. And and to know that, like, even though my mom did have genuine true love with my father, I knew that the main reason she was attracted to him was from things that she was told to. She was told who to be attracted to. Like my aunt, when she was younger, despite her being black herself, like her dating a black man was just not, like, in my family, they would look at her weird, like, you're supposed to marry, like, date someone lighter, have kids with someone lighter, like, just try to whiten your family as much as possible. Like, even sometimes they don't even like the mixed ones. They were like, we want really white Eurocentric babies, that's what we want. And that's never going to happen, because you're a black person yourself. Your child's going to inherit your genes, and especially in my family, genes are strong. So it's just like you can't escape it. And you know. So yeah, those are like the type of stories that.
I feel like it can happen though. After a
Yeah,
couple
absolutely.
after a couple of generations, it can
yes.
definitely, like, look at the Jackson family.
Right, exactly. Paris and all of them. Like,
they're white.
Absolute white.
Okay, like, so, okay, we heard about like the things that you've seen, like darker skin women experience,
Yeah.
and like just the, like you said, the apparent like self-hatred of just trying to like whitening out like your gene pool and like becoming a generation that's no longer black.
Right.
I feel like that's a little bit of what's the word I'm looking for? It's like a genocide.
Yeah.
It's really sad. But anyways, I digress.
Right.
So as a mixed woman, like yourself, like you talked about how like you've been on the receiving end of like privilege. Like, can you tell me about like certain experiences where you felt more privileged? Like, how does it like affect you? Like, can you give me like certain like examples of like where, you know?
Yeah. Unfortunately, in most of my experiences, there has been a dark-skinned person that was on the receiving end of whatever form of oppression was happening. Like, in that moment, when I had these experiences, it was mainly, like, with my friends. All my friends were dark-skinned, and we would take group pictures together, and they would post it, like, either on their Facebook or their Instagram pages and things like that. And whether it be boys or girls or anything like that, they were always like, oh, who's the one with the fro? Or who's the girl with, like, all that hair? Who's the light-skinned one? They would always say that, who's the light-skinned one? And they wouldn't pay any attention to my friends because of how they looked, because of their skin color. And that was mainly it. Like, it was just mainly, like, you know, situations of, like, attractiveness and flirting and those type of things. Like, it was never really, like, say, like, in class, like, I was treated differently from, like, my classmate because I was light-skinned, dark-skinned. I never really saw that, like, in school or anything like that. It was always with, like, these romantic teenage, you know, like, type of situations. And I would just see how I was favored over them. And I would see how, like, my friends who were darker skinned, they were more masculinized, and I was never masculinized, ever.
Okay, so within these like romantic endeavors, what was the identity of like the people that were like chasing you romantically?
Black. They were black. Monoracially black boys.
Yeah. And like, how old were you when this was happening?
Started just like probably around I was like 13. That's when it started.
Well, sometimes I ask like the question of like, black women have this trope of always like being masculinized and like all that stuff, but I feel as though like black men are really they don't see the harm in saying that black women are masculine to themselves. Like, because when you are describing like your group of women as masculine, that inherently makes you feminine. And I feel like they don't understand how that works. And so you're publicly broadcasting weakness, right? But in the way that you think like you're shaming somebody, you yourself make yourself look weak to other races of men. Because as much as like colorism exists in other in my like theory, I really don't think there's like a lot of races. I think there's just three. Black, white, and mixed.
Right.
Like, every Asian is not a race. Like, they're more phenotypically like close to white people. Like, they literally have like the same phenotype. You know what I mean? Like, the hair texture, the skin. Like, what really makes them different? Like, you know what I mean? Like, and even like Hispanic, that's not a race. Like, there's white, black, and mixed Hispanics. Like, you know what I mean? Like, everything always fits into those categories for me. So to all these like races and other, I should say ethnicities, right? To all these other ethnicities of men, like, you're publicly like broadcasting weakness. And these other men, like, while they still might have like colorism inside their own community, they never, I've never heard like a Japanese man complaining about how his wife is masculine. I never heard any race of man saying that like they were more masculine. Even the whole feminist movement, white men weren't like saying that white women were like masculine. They were just saying that like, you know what I mean, like, get your ass in the kitchen like type of energy, like, you know what I mean, like, it wasn't, they were still exerting dominance and masculine, like,
Right.
you know, patriarchal dominance and masculinity. And I say all this to say is that it's like really unfortunate that this had to happen to you.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like it's not a compliment.
Right.
Like, they're fetishizing you. And I feel like they're kind of placing you on this pedestal. Because my next question would be, like, within these, like, romantic endeavors, like, did it ever go somewhere where, like, you know, you were like, oh my God, like, I genuinely feel like a strong emotional bond with this person who has showed themselves to be colorist?
Well, redacted. This boy had been talking to for a while. I was really attracted to him. Like, I thought he was really handsome. I was interested in him. So this is the part when we started to get to know each other, FaceTime, phone calls, hanging out, whatever. And at first it just would start off by, like, it wouldn't even really start off as anything. Like, he just came straight out, like, boom, colors. I was like, oh, shit. Like, sorry, we could take that out. But I remember one time he referred to the Haitian girls at his school as those ugly, dirty ass black Haitian bitches. That's what he said.
Wow.
And I was like, wait, pause. That's when I was like, pause. I had to check him, like, who the fuck do you think you come from? Your mother's black. The lady that you're being taken under right now is your grandmother, your black grandmother. And it's so much more than just that. Why are you referring to a human being like that?
Yeah.
And I feel like when they add, and it's also like this other layer when he said, like, oh, them dirty ass black Haitian bitches, and then also just like the entire like Haitian American experience for so many Haitians, like in other communities with people with other non-Haitians, and like just that extra is just a lot. And that's when I had to like check him, and that was a conversation I had with him after this like super traumatic experience with him, where I was hanging out with him one day. We started kissing. It's a natural thing that happens. And he told me that I kissed like an aggressive black girl.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, really, we were in an Uber. And I was just kind of like, what? I was really like puzzled. I was like, what? I was like, I had to like take a double take. I'm like, did he really just say that to me? Like, I was like, he couldn't have like possibly just said that to me. And I wasn't going to jump out of the Uber, but, like, as soon as we got back to, like, where we were sitting down, and he did this other, like, sexual assault on me, like, made me put my hand on his, And it was just, like, it was just the way that he correlated aggressiveness with blackness.
Mm-hmm.
And...
yeah, he was aggressive.
Exactly. And it was just like, I don't even really know how to like explain it, but he is black himself, fully black. Both of his parents are black, and yeah, that was a pretty traumatic experience.
I'm sorry that you had to undergo that.
Thank you.
And that like harassment on your body, and
Yeah.
like just him like really disgracing like your humanity, like
Yeah.
you know what I mean? It's really quite disrespectful, and I'm sorry that you had to undergo that. I just wow, like a lot to unpack with that story, like a lot. You know what I think it is? I think, and like I've gotten this, I don't want to like say this, I completely came up with this by myself, because I didn't. But I feel as though the reason why like black men are colorist is the self-hatred, right?
Yeah.
So let's like really delve deep into that. I think that black men hate black women because black women give birth to them, and then because they can't change their blackness, they're born into a society where everybody else deems like them as like expendable, and like just a really like low caste system. If we think about like India, it's like being born black is like kind of like a subservient class if you live in America. I mean, obviously, like you can make more of yourself, but we have to be honest, right? Systems are in place to maintain a certain hierarchy. So I just feel as though that's where the real hatred comes from. It's like, you give birth to me, and the whole world like kind of like hates me in a way, or like I'm born into like this like subservient class, and I hate you for this. I hate you because I'm black. Like, you know what I mean? I hate that like it's your womb that I came out of. And I think that's why they fetishize and they pedestalize like lighter skin. I would just say like women of no color, like, to be quite frank. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and I really think that's where like the mindset comes from. And whenever like you kind of like reduce it to that, it's always like well, that's not what it is. But then like, what is it? Because it's just like you said, you're black yourself. Your mother is black. And yet like all you say is disparaging things about black people. Like, you are not black yourself. Like, you cannot distance yourself from your blackness. Like, you literally, you can't change your skin. And so I just really, my whole thesis about this too is like, I wanted to cover like the topic of colorism with you, because I know your identity gives like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like your experiences are extremely like interesting, especially with this topic. But I sent you like my whole thesis, and I feel like there's this whole like big branch. And the fact that like colorism is even like one of the biggest issues in the black community is kind of like, it's really like dumb, right? Because it's just like, we already live in a racist society, right? White people cannot be colorist, right? Because colorism is an intra-racial thing, right? So it's just like, so white people aren't even exerting this. And you can't even use the example of like field slave or stuff like that, because it's just like, dude, like that's what I'm talking about. Like, that happened 400 years ago. Like, there's no other way. And they're like, oh, like within the media. But then it's just like, but whenever I do see this portrayal, like, the people who are upset about it are black women, right? Because like, black men are always like, you know what I mean? Like, they get represented, and like, they never fight for, you know, the women to get represented. They don't fight for anybody else but themselves. So it's really weird because we live in a patriarchal world, right? And like, the way that men, especially like Asian men, Hispanic men, the way that they maneuvered in society, because they were also treated as like lower, right? I mean, they still are treated as such, but like, look at Asians. Like, they're like, you know what I mean? Might I say they're a little higher than white people in terms of like money. You know, like, they have like a lot of global dominance, you know? So, but look at where they came from. They were in internment camps. Like, you know what I mean? And yet, like, if I go, they have a Chinatown in every single, like, city. So it's just like, they know the meaning of community and building yourself up, and knowing that, like, in a patriarchal world, this is how you're supposed to maneuver. Like, I think that, like, black men are, like, the biggest feminists, and yet they hate feminism so much. Because it's just like, you guys don't want to subscribe to this patriarchal idea, but yet you hate feminism. But that's exactly what that is. And it's just like, it's weird. And I hate to, like, subscribe to this patriarchal idea, but I want to live in reality. You know what I mean? It's nice to be like, okay, like, it's a damaging system, and that's completely true. However, I can't negate the fact that this is the world that I live in. I can never, no amount of like free thinking will ever remove reality from that. So it's just like, we need to like stand in reality a little bit, and like, it's okay to like try to think about how you can fix the situation, but let's try to like, I don't know. But anyways, I digress. I just feel as though, like, it's really bizarre to me. Like, it's really bizarre to me. And I don't know, like, while, like, black women do participate in colorism as well, the way that it is, like, done is, like, in a different way. Like, I feel like sometimes it's it's both, like, low self-esteem behavior, but, the way that women do it, it's kind of like a response. Because I feel like women are the ones that get it the most. Like, they're the victims of it. So it's like, it's kind of like a coping mechanism in a way. And it's just like, with boys, it's like, they're the aggressors. You understand what I mean? And like, I'm not saying that like boys can't get discriminated against for colorism, but then think about it, who's also doing discrimination? It's mostly other boys, right? Like, it's mostly done by other boys. And yeah, sometimes girls participate, but it's mostly perpetuated by boys. So it's just like, we have this culture in which like black men get to complain about like what's going on in society. They get to say that like I don't feel safe when I walk in the streets. I'm getting killed. People don't want me to advance. And yet, in your own community, you're disparaging, disrespecting, violating women and children. It's just like, that doesn't make any sense to me, right? And if I'm looking at this from another perspective, if I'm looking at this like as a white person, like, to be quite candid, it's just kind of like, yo, like you don't value yourself, so why should I value you? You're expendable. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have any self-worth. And when you don't have self-worth, that's observable. You know what I mean? It's observable by the way that you carry yourself, the way that you talk. You know, especially as a man in society, like, people pay attention to that. And so, especially like it would be a different case if it was just like a select few of black men. But this is the majority. Like, this is the collective, how the collective thinks. Mm-hmm. And so it's very like disheartening. I thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you.
And, you know, it really does a lot to like further like, you know, I don't want to say rationalization, but it helps me to see things in such a better light. I dare to say that like every black man is colorist. Mm-hmm. Every single black man is colorist. Like, this is not like, you know, proven by statistics. But as a black man myself, and as somebody that lives in the black community, I can't say I've met a black man that wasn't colorist. Right. I can honestly say that. Like, honestly say that. And it's just like, I feel like, yes, can colorism be unlearned? Yes, because in that form, I'm a black man, right? So there was a point in time where I was colorist. So it's just like, when you do the work, you look at yourself in the mirror, you have that self-acceptance, and you realize that, hey, like, I can't change my skin color. I mean, you can if you want to get a disease, but like, I can't change anything. I have to just love you have to really give yourself the self-esteem and confidence that like the world refuses to give you. And it's like it's the best lesson that you can really learn, because it teaches you how to have self-love. And like, once you have that foundation of self-love, nobody can ever dim your light, because, you know, you light your own light. Nobody has access to it. And I feel like it's many men, like many black men, don't have that. They have that self-preservation mindset of like, let me keep myself safe. Even if you look at like, and I know this might gear from another thing, but like another thing that I want to talk about was like misogynoir, which is like violence against black women. But even when you talk about, and I don't want to like trigger you, but when you talk about like the R word and stuff like that, and like assault and harassment and all that stuff, whenever a story comes out, it's always self-preservation. I always hear black men saying, we don't know the full story, or let's wait to see what's going on. I don't want to condemn somebody when I don't know the full story. And cool, that's fine, right? Whatever. You can have that opinion.
Right.
You don't have to condemn the man, but why don't you honor the victim? Why don't you say, I don't know the full story, but if this is true, I absolutely do not stand for sexual harassment of minors or of women or of anybody, period, because it's a violation. And that's, I have morals, you know what I mean? I'm a man, I have principles, I have beliefs that I stick by, right? So it's just like, it's observable when you like, people move like that, because you are basically putting yourself in front of like women and children. Right. And you're a man. No other like race of men do that. Like, I mean, men do that, period, because like, you know, rape is mostly perpetrated by men, like 99%. So it's just like, whatever. But it's just like, to the degree in which like black men do it, I feel like with sexual like assault and like the R word and stuff like that, in our community, like that shit is rampant, and it's never called out, and there's never accountability on the culprit. Like, it's always the victim, and sometimes these victims are children, and it's just like, the fact that like you only care about yourself, like, it's really disheartening. And it's just like, how can you want somebody to be submissive to you, because that's what they want, right? They want submissiveness. How can you be respected to lead when the people who are weaker than you, which are women and children, from a physical standpoint, you put yourself over them. You would rather protect yourself than the children and women in your community. That's really bizarre. No other race of people do that.
Right.
We're the only community that does that. So it's like, as I get older, I'm starting to really contextualize, like, what's really going on? What is oppression? What is racism? Like, what is this stuff? Where is it really coming from? And racism is irrational. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I will never say it's rational. But getting into there's no but. And getting into the mindset of, like, trying to see how, like, other people view the Black community, because we don't live in a vacuum. Other people can see our actions, especially with social media. So it's just like, looking at that, I'm like, damn, we're not really oppressed like that. Like, you know what I mean? Of course, systems are in place, but in this day and age, like, I don't know, true, like, freedom is to really put your life on the line for your freedom, right? This whole George Floyd situation, I know I'm kind of, like, jumping around, but this whole George Floyd situation, it's not that I didn't feel bad, because nobody deserves to die, like, period. It's just really bizarre that, like, a group of people watched as this man was murdered. Like, it was a public execution. That was a modern day lynching. Like, that was literally a modern day lynching. And, like, people were taking videos of it.
Right.
And the fact that a lot of people digested that, like, 9-minute video, like, I was just like, I looked at everybody that watched it so weirdly, because I'm like, this is Trump. You're literally watching somebody die. Like, how? That's not normal to me. Like, and this is not like a movie or a TV show where it's fake. This is a real life thing. Like, and a lot of people sat and watched that video. It's weird, right? It's like, it's weird. And this was the crux of Black Lives Matter, right? This person who allegedly kicked a pregnant woman in the stomach, who statistically fits all the stereotypes of what white people perceive us to be, who also was not dating a Black woman, right? And that's a whole nother topic about interracial dating. I only bring that up because when he died, the white woman said he would have wanted peace. And it's just like, yeah? You know what I mean? It's just like, I'm looking at all these things and I'm just like, how are we oppressed? Because any real person, I would not be able to watch somebody get murdered in front of me. Like, I could not watch that. Even if that means, like, I would get shot, like, my person would get hurt. I lived a good life. I lived a good life because I stood for freedom. And I'm a man. Like, I don't know if you ever heard that TikTok of, like, why don't you go die in a fucking war? You know what I mean? Or stuff like that. Like, I'm not saying that men are expendable, but if we live in a patriarchal world, we kind of have to bend to the rules of it, right? A little bit if we want to maintain dominance. And I'm speaking from a man's perspective, right? So it's just like, you can't want all these things and then not also fit the tab yourself. Be a protector. Like, there's no way, like, you're a man and you watch this man get killed and then now you want me, like, to, like, I don't know, like, what do you guys want from this? Like, what was the goal of displaying this weakness? Because that's what that was to me. Like, that was such a display of weakness, of, like, complacency, because we literally in 2020 watched somebody get murdered with cameras, with everything going on, with, like, the whole mindset of people, like, changing a little bit more, wanting to be more, like, free and egalitarian. With everything that's going on, we still chose compliancy. And then there's Breonna Taylor, which was the perfect juxtaposition, because she literally was working in the police field, right? And she gets murdered while she was sleeping, and the person who prevents her from getting freedom was a Black man. It wasn't anybody else but him, because he had the power as the attorney to file the charges, and he chose not to. And it's just like, it doesn't matter if you were going to lose your job. It's a matter of integrity. This woman was sleeping and she got murdered. Like, that's demonic evil behavior. That's murder. That's, again, modern day lynching. Like, this is literally a flex of power. Like, I can do whatever I want. And it's just like, even with that story, the person who got mostly highlighted was Breonna Taylor's boyfriend, who is alive. You know what I mean? And every time people were talking about Breonna Taylor, they did it in such a, like, what's the word I'm looking for? It's like exploiting her. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I remember that white actress who like posted a topless pic talking about, we're still not, by the way, we're still not talking about Breonna Taylor. Like, bitch, what the fuck is that? Like, how dare you do that? Like, you know what I mean? Like, this is a dead person you're trying to show your breast. Like, you know what I mean? As if, like, what are you trying to do? You're trying to use this woman's death to make yourself look like a social justice warrior.
Right.
Like, that's utterly fucking disgusting. Like, you know what I mean? And, like, but then the energy was never, it was so much more respect for a criminal. Like, you know what I mean? And it's just because he's a black man. And what did she do in her life? It's just so, it really brings me to this point of like, the problem with the black community is black male worship. Like, and I got this from like this YouTuber that I watch, because I always give credit. Like, and it's basically like a system where like, the black community only worships black men. Everybody else is expendable and disposable. Black men are the only group of men that are called kings, even though there's no kingdoms. I don't see any black hospitals. I don't see any black airports. I don't see a black Facebook. I don't see a black Twitter. I don't see none of that on a grand scale. So how are you a king, right? And we're talking about, oh, they always bring up the Moors. That was like 800 years ago. And then even after, isn't that a little sad to say, because while you were kings, then you became a slave? Like, it's just like, you know what I mean? Like, there's never been a point in history, and I don't think I'm going to put this part in the interview because this is like really a force, but there's never been a point in history where black men have been strong. And as a black man, it's really sad to realize that, because I'm like, fuck, like, as much as I'm talking shit, I'm a black man, like, this is how the world sees me. And I think that's what motivates me to be so, like, for my goals and always be like a fighter for like women and children, because it's just like, I know that like in my community, like that is absent. Like, that's mostly placed on women and children to fend for themselves. And it's extremely disgusting, and it hurts. And it further puts us in a like subordinate class. But as much as like I talk about this, we have to talk about like alternatives and like how to make the problem better, because it can't just be negative. And honestly, for me, I think the only positive thing is absorbing this truth and having these really difficult and harsh conversations that really make you sad. But then within those conversations, because we only learn and know how to do stuff when we're uncomfortable. So after that, after I started realizing like, oh my God, like black men really, and I'm not even, like, it's mostly straight black men, but black gay men also like perpetuate stuff too, because they're still black men before, like, you know what I mean? It's just like, it's our whole collective, and it's just like, I don't know. The only things that I see to make this work is like, don't talk about it, be about it. Like, I try to spread this message. I try to like talk about this stuff as much as I can, even though it's really off-putting to talk about, because who wants to talk about this shit? But I'm just like, who else is talking about it? And why aren't we doing anything to fix it? Like, what's going on? Like, aren't we free thinkers? Aren't we like, you know what I mean? Y'all be talking about other stupid ass shit, so why can't we talk about something that could actually like better our community and help our children in the future, and not, you know, break the cycle? So yeah, that's what I feel like needs to be done, is like, there definitely needs to be accountability. And it's just accountability, and we can't even get to that first step because black men never take accountability for their actions. And it's like, if black men aren't taking accountability, it's time for other groups to take accountability. If black straight men aren't taking accountability for their actions, you know what black gay men need to do? They need to stop fucking around with black men who are straight but are down low. That's what they need to do. Take accountability for that. As a gay man, be like, okay, I'm not fucking with somebody who's going to continue to disrespect me. As a black woman, I can't really tell black women what to do because I'm a man, but what I would say is as a black woman, I would not take black men serious at all. Like, when black men are talking about, oh, I have all these options, snow bunny, I'm that most desired man on the face of the planet, like, oh, it's tough for y'all, like, other women know how to be more submissive and all that stuff. Black women just need to be like, cool. There doesn't need to be a response, because it's attention seeking. Because if that was all true, why don't you go over there and live it up with your submissive, feminine partner?
Right.
Why are you in black spaces trying to, you know what I mean, perpetuate how happy you are? You know, psychologically, we know you're lying.
Right.
So I feel like there's like that accountability and that, and not also taking black men as serious without action. I feel like if a black man is dressed in a nice tux or like something like that and says a couple of like vocabulary words that he fucking learned in a prison dictionary, everybody's like, oh, yep. Like, look at T.I. The ghetto thesaurus. He probably picked up a thesaurus in jail, like, and read it, and was just like, oh my God, I'm a fucking genius. And it's just like, you literally have the mental capacity of a third grader. Nothing he says inherently makes sense. All he says is big words, like, and sometimes he doesn't even use those words correctly. So it's just like, you're just so dumb. Why don't you just rap? Like, why do you feel like you have a way? You don't have a degree. And I'm not saying that like people that don't have degrees can't have an opinion, but you're talking about something as if you studied it. Like you actually like, or you wrote a dissertation on it. You have you don't. You're literally like saying stupid ass shit. Talk about your music. Talk about your wife. Talk about your art. Like, why are you talking about, you know what I mean? It's just so bizarre to me. But anyways, I digress. That was my little thingy. That's why I had to do a little bit of breathing exercise before I didn't, because this takes a lot of like emotional energy. And it's also like really hot in here. I need to turn on my car. But do you have any? I know that was like a lot. Do you have any like things to say, final statements, or like, you know?
All I have to say is, because if we're gonna talk about moving forward, I guess what I would say for me, all mixed people, lighter skin, mixed race people, and lighter skin black people, and black men. I'm on the benefiting end. They're the ones perpetuating it. Have to hold yourself accountable. You have to, especially me as a light-skinned person, like I was put on this pedestal that I didn't ask to be put on. So it's like at the end of the day, like when white people say, oh, like why are you blaming me for colonization? Like, you know, like I wasn't like a slave master or whatever the fuck. But no, but you're white at the end of the day.
And you benefit
and you benefited from that entire history. So it's like, it's the same thing for me. Did I ask to be born light skinned? No. But I am light skinned and I'm afforded certain privileges. And it's like, and if I can speak up for a darker skinned person, speak the fuck up. Why are you remaining quiet?
It's funny that you say that, because as you're saying that, it just made me think of a question. Because I feel like the pedestalization is definitely conditional.
Yeah.
As soon as you don't, like, if you're not like a dumb person who's like, you know, somebody who's not mentally strong, they can easily fall for that trap and think like it's endearing, you know what I mean? Oh, yep, I'm cute, I'm next, like, I'm better than other people. And it's just like, as soon as you like say something else, or look at the whole Saweetie and Quavo situation, look at the, anytime like a mixed woman, Amber Rose, when they speak about certain situations, I never feel bad, because it's just like, LOL, you guys have said a lot of colorist things in your past. And you thought that you would get a pass as a mixed woman because you're dating colorist Iggy Azalea. You're dating colorist men who pedestalized you at first. But then you get mad because you get the same black woman you get the same black man that black women get. And that's such a little burn, because they always thought, fuck, I was better than these women. And it's just like, you were not. Who was telling you this thing? The guy that wanted to fuck you.
Yeah, exactly. He didn't value you.
Yeah, you're literally a fucking fetish. She objectified you. And that's why I said, you have to be mentally weak to not see what the fuck is really going on.
And that's what the type of conversations like me and my friends would have, me and my friends who were darker skinned, like we would just have open conversations about this shit. And so like my friends also, they've been holding me accountable, and they shouldn't have had to when they did. But like when we have conversations, I'll talk about like how I felt about people putting me on this pedestal, and like people be like, oh, like you're so pretty. I never liked it. One, I don't know how to take a compliment. That's for anybody. And then two, but like when you're like, ooh, you're like exotic, and like you're literally like treating me like a fucking animal, like a species. No, I'm not a fan of that. And when people be like, girl, you getting all the compliments today, I'm like, those don't feel like compliments to me. Like, that's literal fucking harassment. And there was a couple times where I went off on somebody for calling me exotic and for calling me spicy and shit, because like, and they'd be like, girl, like that just means they're interested in you or something. No, No, that's not
it's
what it
coded
is.
language.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one that I happen to learn. I know how to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know what you're doing. Like, I know you don't actually value me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I started, like, having, like, a lot of self-introspection, looking back. And I'm like, were a lot of these boys that, like, were trying to get at me when I was younger, like, they literally only wanted to get with me because they sexualized my body. I would post, you know, dancing videos, whining, twerking, whatever. And I didn't think anything of it. I never sexualized myself. But here I was being sexualized by black men. And it was just like, I don't even fucking know how to, like, explain this shit. It was just like, when I would see other people, like, thinking that this is something that I should be embracing and loving, I'm just like, no. No.
I think it's because you're not a dumb person.
Exactly.
I think it's you're not a dumb person, and you have self-worth and self-esteem. You know that, like, when somebody is, like, demeaning you into just, like, your appearance, you are no longer a human being.
Exactly.
Because you're a human being with dynamic feelings and emotions, and you're way more than just how you look. And that's something that you can't control. Like, you know what I mean? You can call somebody beautiful, but to go to the extent of, like, you're really mad, amped about how they look, like, and then this person looks the exact opposite of you.
Right.
It's just, like, it's really bizarre. But I'm glad that you caught exactly what was going on, because a lot of people don't, and I never feel bad for them.
I'm okay.
Yeah, that whole Amber Rose situation, I didn't feel bad for her, because Amber Rose, in multiple interviews, she claims that she's not black, which is true. And I don't know why people get mad when mixed people do that, because I'm like, I love that, because they're sticking to what their identity. They're not black.
Right.
Like, why are you trying to? And this is the other thing with black people. Like, mixed people do it too, but I feel like there's a reason why mixed people do it. It's because black people enable. But it's so gross. Like, you are not black. Like, why are you? And these mixed people don't want to be black either. Like, Meghan Markle, Saweetie, they've all said, I'm Filipino. When you say that, you literally say, I am not black. Right. You know what I mean? So it's just like, why are you trying to give blackness to people who don't want to be black?
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's just like, it's so pathetic. Like, it's so much like, oh my God, like, please. Yeah. Like, you know, it's like, ew. Like, and I don't think people see how nasty that energy looks. Like, I'm just like, because imagine a mixed person really going up to the white community and be like, I'm white. They would literally be like, nigga, get the fuck out of my face. An Asian person, they'll be like, even if you're like the lightest mix, you are not 100% them, because you have another race in you. Like, why don't we gatekeep blackness in that way? And you know why? It's because it benefits black men. Because when we do say that these women are black, right? It gives this narrative that black women need to compete with women that they can never look like, because phenotypically, they're two different races, right? So it's always this little like, ha 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 ha, look at my access to these women who I'm pretending that are black, who I know aren't black.
Right.
So it's like, you know what I mean? It's like to have a perpetual chip on your shoulder, kind of like a chin check.
Right.
Like to keep you a little bit lower. And it's just like, no, like, I don't know. Anyways, I feel like this is okay, because we can keep chatting for a while, and I'm getting really hot. But, that was it, guys. Thank you for listening. We definitely could have like talked a lot more, but it's getting late. It's hot. Yeah. Thank you for, tuning in. Thank you so much for sharing your experience and being vulnerable with me. Because you shared a lot of like intimate things. So I really do appreciate your candor and taking the time to really like, energy-wise do this. Because this is not easy work to do. This is not an easy conversation to have. It's extremely uncomfortable. And it really puts you like, damn, you feel a little sad sometimes. And sometimes you really have to recognize those emotions. So again, thank you. I really do appreciate it. And yeah, that's all, folks. So I will have other series of interviews. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one.